please be. Is this good for you guys?
This is good for us. Good. Yeah, we're on.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Dave, you are helping us out massively here, because I've got to be honest, the 5 a.m. slot wasn't particularly popular.
I bet. So you guys have been pushing through all night?
Pushing through all night. I cheated slightly. I did have a half an hour nap. I realized, so about midnight our time, we'd finished with the main guests that were being interviewed. So that was time for me and Paul to start sharing our stories. Yeah. And about an hour into that, my brain just wasn't working quickly enough. You know, when you're just trying to get words out and they're just like, your brain's like, I can't quite find them. So I thought, for the sake of my morning guests, I will have a half an hour nap and just try and reset. And it seems to have worked.
Good work. And I hope out of screen there's a few coffees on the coffee table in front of your knees there. Is there a bit of caffeine?
It's a mess. There's sweets, there's nuts, there's coffee cups, there's croissants, there's chocolates, there's all sorts. But Dave, we're so happy to have you here. You call yourself the Bipolar Pastor. What a fantastic title. So I would love to, let's start there. Let's start with your journey. Take us right back to the very beginning.
Yeah, and feel free to interject with any questions or anything you have, lads. So basically my story is I've been a Christian for 24 years and been in ministry for 20 years. My wife and I were always pastors together. We were youth pastors and then planted a church together about 13 years ago, which we still pastor now. And along the way, I've always known that my brain just functioned a little bit differently to everyone else, because I think we all got our waves and our rhythms. But I started to find about maybe 7 years ago that I wasn't able to manage my thoughts any longer in a way that I thought was appropriate, not just as a pastor, but as a Christian, as a general person. So what would happen is I'd get fixated on certain, topics or on ideas, and I'd have to research them until I looked at them from every single angle absolutely possible. And it might sometimes take a week, sometimes a month, sometimes 2 months. And I get myself stuck in what I now know is mania, which is, as you fellas would know, the high points of bipolar. So basically, I'm in the bipolar family. I'm technically diagnosed as bipolar type 2, but I'm not. My rhythms aren't the same as that. So in bipolar, if your manias go for more than 7 days, they usually classify, well, this is in Australia, as bipolar type 1. Yeah. And if it's 4 days, it's bipolar type 2. But what happens with me is that I get manias that are a little less intense than our bipolar type 1 friends, but go for like 8 weeks at a time. And so I'll be fixated on something like a dog with a bone all day, every day for months at a time. And then eventually what'll happen is my body will just like run out of adrenaline, exhaustion, and I'll fall down and I'll go into pretty deep depression. Why it took a while to get sort of sorted out is that sometimes when you're manic, it feels amazing, right? So you're like, got all this extra energy. It feels like you've had 5 Red Bulls and just done 50 push-ups. It's amazing. Had a good kiss with your wife and you're like, yeah, this life's fantastic. But in amongst it, so the way I try to explain it, because I've taken my kids on the journey, is that all of us have waves in life. And what happens with my manic waves is on the way up, if they get to 70% and I can maintain kind of like 70% of the elevation, I'm really effective as a pastor, can really network, preach well, lots of energy, that sort of thing. But when it goes beyond that, I start kind of losing grip with good decisions. I'll make irrational decisions, or I'll jump into things that I think are brilliant and then get surprised and offended when everybody else in my world doesn't understand how brilliant and epic these ideas are, right? And so about 7 years ago, that was at its worst. And I went to my doctor when I was depressed because I wasn't going when I was manic. And then he'd go, Dave, these rhythms just seem very consistent with someone who's coming off bipolar. And he started doing a mental health assessment. And basically one thing led to another. And I got referred to a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And in that process, realized that I was dealing with the bipolarity.
And how old were you at this point, Dave?
So now I'm 43. I got diagnosed when I was around about 38. But now that I know what I know, those rhythms had been in my life since early 20s.
Yeah.
But I'd put it down to maybe like, oh, he's just extroverted or he's just a bit impulsive. Because I'd always biased, like I'd go out for McDonald's and come home with a boat, you know. So I'd be like, well, and to a certain extent, you know, that personality is attractive to people if they want to have fun. And we lived on the Gold Coast and it's kind of like a fun culture. So, you know, when we planted the church, that all kind of worked together, which is why I wanted to sort of speak on this topic a little bit, is because as a pastor with bipolar, you've got this weird thing happening where God's using it and you're not exempt from being, you know, part of him using people to bring restoration to broken people. And at the same time, walking with your own crazy brokenness at the same time. So that's kind of my context. That's where I started.
Yeah. And I mean, 38 is a really late age to be diagnosed with something like bipolar. And as you said, you experienced that all through, well, since as long as you can remember, you recognized that you had those waves.
Yeah.
What was childhood like with those waves? Like, how did you feel? I mean, it sounds like you felt aware of them. Did people around you feel aware of them? I mean, you quite often hear stories about children getting disciplined at school because people don't understand what it is they're going through. What was your experience like, and how did people around you react to that?
Yeah, so mine's a bit typical of the Western European heritage. So my parents were both born in Holland, and I don't know how many Dutch people you know, but if there was a motto for all of Holland, it'd be just suck it up and get through it. And so
our CEO and our CEO are both Dutch. They've got Dutch blood. So yeah.
Sorry.
No, they'll completely relate to that. They're like, yeah,
they just go hard, you know. And so in our house, we valued work ethic and going hard and everything, but like anything of weakness, sickness, brokenness was just kind of really dismissed. And so there wasn't really the platform to discuss this. Interestingly, looking back, I'd be very suspect that one of my parents also has been walking with bipolar for a long time, undiagnosed as well. But in my own life, it wasn't really recognized. And one of the problems was I used marijuana really heavily from about 15 onwards as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
But also, as you fellas know, that helps bring on the onset later in life. And so I didn't realize in my escaping, I was actually just making everything worse. And so by the time it all came to the forefront, I was a pretty messed up individual by then. Yeah.
Yeah. How did marijuana, I mean, did it mellow you out? Like how was it helping in that instance?
No, it was really just an escape. So it was almost like a numbing of the pain of just like being a bipolar kid and not knowing what was going on.
Yeah.
Because my rhythms as well, like I could go from cloud 9 to a cloud of darkness within hours. And so I just didn't understand what was happening, man. And because of that sort of Western European heritage, we didn't talk about feelings or whatever. I didn't even know a physiotherapist existed till I was moved out of home. Because if we hurt ourselves growing up, it was always like, you'll be right. Just have a Panadol. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So as an adult, I had to sort of start revisiting all that. And there's a couple of traumatic things later in life triggered some of the things I'd repressed, and then I was like, man, I got to do business with some of this.
Amazing. And did you grow up in a Christian home? Were
you church going home, but not like it was more of a like, you know, that's what we did Sunday morning until the kids were old enough to choose to continue on or not, and I chose not to continue on till later in life.
Great. So we pick up the story from when you kind of get diagnosed at the age of 38. And also talk to me about are you married?
I'm married 20 years to my wife, Jess. Yes.
That's incredible. Talk to me about how, one of the things I'd love to hear is what Jess's experience of this is like, because it must be challenging when she says, Dave, can you go get some milk, and you come back with the boat. So how was she with that?
Look, in the early days, she found it novel. But as time wore on, as every man knows, your wife doesn't want to marry her son. And so, you know, I'd make irrational decisions and she'd be like, look, Dave, we can't afford that. Or you didn't think about it consulting me before booking a trip to Vietnam or whatever. And so what started as kind of endearing and attractive and charismatic eventually became something that was very stressful and heavy for her to carry, mate. Yeah.
And I've got a friend that got diagnosed quite late in life with ADHD, and I know for them, it's really it reframes your entire world. So it's a huge thing to kind of then to re-examine your life through the lens of quite a late diagnosis like that.
Yeah.
What was your experience like? So 38, you've lived a lot of life already, and then you're suddenly looking at that life again through the lens of this diagnosis of bipolar. What was that experience like? What were some of the things that made sense suddenly? What were some of the things that actually, I don't know, you had to work through, like re-examining life with that lens on?
Yep. So a couple of things. On the positive side, actually, because I'd never really even researched bipolar before this, and when my doctor suggested it might be on the table, I started obviously reading some symptoms and things. And for me, it was almost like my eyes were opened up. I'm like, wow, this guy's been reading my report card. Like, this is exactly how I feel. And these are some of the rhythms and the pitfalls. And so on one sense, it was a relief. But on the other sense, I had to deal with a fair bit in my spiritual walk, because I'd been leading a church. And because we planted the church, I felt a fair weight of responsibility as like a spiritual shepherd there. And then trying to kind of like reconcile, okay, what does it look like to lead with mental illness? And am I disqualified? Or, you know, what safeguards do I need to put in place? So it was like a reframing of my personal life with my family and also the ministry life, which for me is also vocational. So I don't have another job. I'm just a pastor. And yeah, it was just sort of trying to pull together, okay, where do I still fit into all this stuff I've been doing for the last, 3 decades?
And was that an easy process? Was it a difficult process? And how I'd be really interested to know how your church responded to that.
Okay, so shout out to my church. They were the greatest. I had a suspicion that they'd be supportive, but I didn't realize the depth of how amazing they were. So the reason I actually just called the first podcast Pastor with Bipolar is because that's the first time I just put it out to everyone at once. So in the leading up to that, my friends and inner circle and stuff would know. But I did that because I'm like, do you know what? I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off and tell everyone in my world at once what's going on. And that was actually a positive step. So when I did that, the church was like, they were largely supportive. Some people didn't know what to say, and they were trying to be kind, but it was the lines like, oh, Dave, even though you got bipolar, we still think you're a good preacher. Like, those yeah, I'm like, I see the heart. That's fine. Yeah. But on the whole, they were really good. And so we took some long service leave just to kind of piece together what that would look like. We went away for 2 months over to Southeast Asia, and then that was a really good time of sort of like just solidifying, okay, we're not disqualified. God still can use us. I'm still called to this. And then we came back, and after 2 months, the church had organized another month where everything was taken care of. So the preaching roster, everything we would usually do was sorted out. So we'd just turn up. And that kind of speaks to the heart of the church. They're very supportive. There's also questions, though. They want to know what it looks like, and and I know in their minds they're thinking back on decisions we might have made 5 years ago, and then start piecing together, okay, that probably wasn't a good decision, or,
And did much stuff come to the surface there? Because if you've got a congregation that are suddenly questioning decisions you made 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Easy.
Yeah, a few things did. Luckily, they weren't too catastrophic. But what we then did is put in place a really apt support network of people in mental health, like mental health. We're really blessed in our church. It's only small, but we've got a lot of medical professionals in mental health who kind of just keep an eye on me. Like they're like, okay, is Dave operating out of mania right now? Or is he crossing the line of delusion? Is he actually hearing from God? You know, like discerning people. And look, to this point, they haven't had to come and step in and say, Dave, we think you're incorrect here. But it is good for me to know that they're very engaged. And I feel like that's a good biblical principle anyway, to be accountable to, you know, the wider community as well. So it's been hard though, bro. I got like one of the hard things, I'll show you now, like I got a gaggle of medicine that I have to take just to get through now. Like I'm still on an SSRI because I started on that before I was officially diagnosed with bipolar. I was diagnosed with depression because, like I said before, I'd go to the doctor when I was down, but not when I was manic. I think that happens a fair bit actually. So I've got that. That's my breakfast medication, and then I'm on a Volprate, which is, as you guys probably know, a mood stabilizer. Was an epilepsy medication that had surprisingly good side effects with people with bipolar. And then I'm also on Seroquel. Now, this is the one that made it a little bit hard to talk about because that's an antipsychotic. I don't know. Do you guys also call them antipsychotics there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so for me to actually say that phrase it's a bit of a juxtaposition, I feel like, as a pastor. Hey, guys, I'm on an antipsychotic. In other words, I've got problems with psychosis and I'm trying to lead you guys spiritually. So there's risks there, you know, for them and for me. Yeah.
And when one of the questions that I have just listening to you is we've talked a lot today about the fact that we are mind, body, and spirit, and we are all three things, and actually we need to take care of the health of all three things. Take something like bipolar. The effect on the mind is obvious. You've kind of talked about that. The effect on the body, to some extent, is obvious because you're talking about the medication. What's the effect on your spirit? And how does it chart with the waves? So you said something like one of the people around you checks in, are you really hearing from God? Like, do you notice that actually there's different levels of clarity, or your voice gets mixed in with God's voice? Like, what's the chart? How does your spirit life chart with the bipolar up and down?
Perfect question. And it's still a work in progress. But when I get so before, as I mentioned, the 70% waves, if I get beyond that for a little while, it's okay. But after a little while, I'll start getting paranoid or feel like, okay, so it seems to me with bipolar, you someone's either a friend or an enemy. That's just sort of like, so I don't have neutral people. I either love them to death or think they're out to get me. And so what I have to watch is, say someone makes a comment, and it doesn't even have to be that controversial or even that critical. I'll go home and ruminate over that too much, you know? So it's more like, not as much, I don't think I get as many like kind of God delusions, but I get a misinterpretation of people's comments or how the church is going because I'll be overstimulated, you know, hyper vigilant, trying to, you know, I'll be preaching and someone will leave and I'll be thinking, are they leaving because it's, you know, heresy or because they don't like it or simply they're going to the toilet, you know, like your mind's running too fast. So,
I mean, it sounds, if I'm going to be honest, it sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
Dude, I am so tired. I am so tired, bro.
And when you talk about kind of if you're at 70% or if you're over 70%, do you know, have you learned where you are on that curve at any given time? So like right now, what Dave are we talking to? Where are you on the curve?
Yeah, I'm actually, at the moment, things are great. Fantastic. Because I was really looking forward to this as well. So I'm like, in advance, I'm like thinking, I hope that's a good day.
Yeah.
But so what happens is once I get beyond into the irritable stage, I notice I start getting short, craving way more coffee, just being real precious. Like someone can say something and I'll be really thin-skinned and taking it to heart. And if I feel like everyone's ganging up against me, that's the indication. Now, I've got a little trick. My doctor said it's okay, but I up the Seroquel a little bit when it's too high. For about 3 nights in a row, and that it doesn't always work, but it can bring me back down. So it's why I also like, to be honest, I mean, this is a candid chat. It's why, like, benzos and stuff, I'm really glad they're not easy to get here, is because they're really appealing. Like Valium.
What are benzos?
Oh, like, you know, like your Valium family type drugs. Prozac and like they become really appealing because they do bring me down, but they're just so addictive. And so, like, I've got to also watch out with the medications that I'm on, that I'm not dependent. Like some of them, like with the Volprate, I have to take that because it can have negative effects on your heart if you just go cold turkey. But with the Seroquel, I can freedomly adjust it within 25 milligrams. And that's fine. But yeah, but you're right. It's exhausting, bro. It's exhausting. And I know maybe a week from now I'll crash because I've been going hard for a long time. And then I'll be dark for a few days. And in the darkness, I sometimes even just stay in bed and listen to Psalms of Lament and lean into the darkness and then come out again. So.
And how do you manage that with the quite regimented rhythms of church life? So Sundays are Sundays. So how do you manage that if you're in the midst of a dark period and you've got to get up and preach a sermon on joy? How do you manage that?
We're blessed that we've got a pretty strong preaching team. So I'm scheduled every second week. It goes, my wife's name's Jess, so it goes Dave, Jess, Dave, lay preacher. Dave, Jess, Dave, lay preacher. And so, I mean, it can't work every time. Every now and then I either have to tap out and swap with someone, or just even declare at the start, because they're on the journey now. I can even say at the start, okay, guys, I am pretty manic at the moment. Please don't let your kids clank on the toys down the back, or because that stuff gets really irritating. And I'll just tell them, I'll say, today's a teddy. Play with the teddies today, man. Squeeze those. Don't, and they'll be kind of empathic about that. But look, bro, I as you said the word exhausted before, I resonated because part of, I want to get as much input into the faith and mental health space as I can now while I'm in my 40s and then into my 50s and 60s. Because though I don't want to be like a self-fulfilling negative prophecy, I do know my days of efficiency are numbered because of this. Unless something dramatically changes, I can feel the mental deterioration. I can notice the increase in side effects. It's like I want to get it done as much as possible now, because I don't reckon I'm going to be that guy in his 80s who's still, I'll be in a different space, maybe a retreat space or something. But
and a big question. Has anyone, or have you ever prayed for healing with your bipolar?
Yes,
all
the time.
Has your church, have the church joined you in that? And how do you reconcile the fact that you're still living with it?
I just have to go back to that 2 Corinthians 12 verse. And I know everyone goes back to it, but Paul knew how to get healing. Like, if anyone knew how to raise the dead, pray for the sick, it was him. And with his thorn, he prayed 3 times for the Lord to take it away. And I think that 3 times is kind of indicative. In the Bible, how like when they repeat things 3 times, it's like in Revelation, they're like, holy, holy, holy is like, okay, we really mean business here. We've repeated it 3 times. I think that's what this is sort of saying here. Paul's like, look, I've prayed it in. I've given this adequate prayer attention. It hasn't been removed, but his power is still being made perfect in my weakness, and his grace is sufficient for me, so I press on. And so what I do is that I continue my medication regime, and I'm praying continually for healing. And if I go to a seminar and someone says, who wants healing here? I'm up the front, man. I'll keep asking. And I still pray for other people to get healed. And it's got that, that funny tension where some people do. Yeah, it's just funny how God works. Like my wife had real severe depression in her teenage years, and she's someone who did get healed. And now, 15 years after that, I'm going through this, and it feels like my healing's not coming in the same way. So,
And how does your congregation respond to that? Because obviously you're up the front of the church a lot of the time, advocating for the fact that God is powerful. And what does it feel like to stand up knowing that you are walking with unanswered prayer, and it's evident and it's impacting the congregation to some extent? How do they respond? I mean, you've already given them a shout out. They sound like a phenomenal church.
Yeah.
Part
of it was, in a way, the attitude I'm carrying towards it was, in a way, I don't know why it happened or why these things happen, but what I know is what God used it for. And as part of my coming to grips with all of this, I had this time where I was completely empty and felt like I had nothing left. It was after a lot of rhythms. I was still a pastor at that time and lecturing at a Bible college. A lot of pastors here co-lecture at Bible college and stuff. And I was doing that, and I was just burnt out, coming off a mania that lasted for months. And I just was spent. And I remember just confessing to God, I got nothing left. I'm empty. I got nothing left. And I felt his peace. Like it wasn't an audible voice, but it was like his peace kind of saying, excellent. Now we've got somewhere to move. And I felt like in that confession saying, I got nothing left, is when the weight of being a pastor came off my shoulders, and when the responsibility of all this stuff that I was carrying came off my shoulders. And since then, I've really been able to still struggle with this mental health stuff, but live in a place of real freedom with God. Like I don't feel the burden of running the church anymore, really. I don't feel that weight anymore. It's almost like once I gave that over, I was able to just come good. And so they've seen me walk in greater spiritual freedom, although it's more mental heaviness, I guess.
Yeah. It's something that one of our very first guests this morning talked about, where he had a big breakdown, dealt with massive anxiety by the age of, I think he was 26 at the time, and he was saying that he wouldn't if he could, he wouldn't necessarily go back and do it all over again. But what he does recognize is that complete bottoming out at the age of 26 actually meant that he then no longer had to worry about his reputation. He no longer had stuff. There was a huge freedom that came with that, of just kind of laying it all on the line, because as we've chatted about with various guests today, as men, we are so many of us are fearful about taking that journey into vulnerability because of the exposure, because of the fact that we feel like we've got a reputation to maintain, an ego to maintain, a sense of responsibility to maintain, and yet when we have these moments where we just crash, actually there is a freedom that comes with that in a kind of first way.
I can't agree more, man. Like you said, you wouldn't want the process again. But just that revelation and that freedom, and I had a mentor halfway through say, dude, you're gonna be thankful for this one day. And I got to be honest, I was like, I think that's a platitude. You're just trying to make me feel good. And I actually am, like, in that freedom. And so it changed the whole trajectory of our church. Like after that, we stopped trying so hard, stopped trying to win souls, stopped trying to do this and that. And we preached a whole year on cultivating intimacy with God and spiritual practices and really leaning into that. And everyone just started coming alive. We took the heavy yokes off and just enjoyed God, enjoyed being men of God, and great things happened. And so it was counterintuitive, but it was the best thing as a church, it was best just to let the reins go and stop.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that we've talked about today, is that actually that what often happens with moral failure is that people have just withdrawn and tried to protect their persona for so long that eventually it all bottoms out. And actually the importance of demonstrating and preaching vulnerability, and for that to be something that is led from the front, because it enables us to then have a church that has a redemption culture and has a culture that it's okay with people getting it wrong, because that's something that's so feared. The idea of getting it wrong or preaching on something that people disagree with, or where you use the phrase, you as a church, you've been leading into intimacy with God, and getting some really good practices in place. What are some of those things that you as a church are doing that is breaking away from the norm and actually just leading into intimacy and really good practice?
Man, it is just the simple stuff of the gospel, solitude, silence, prayer, just implementing rhythms that draw us back to, draw us away from performance and just into the Father heart of God. Do you guys know John Mark Comer and the Practicing the Way guys at all?
Yeah, so, I haven't read the book yet, but I listened to a podcast that he did when he was
just some of the same sort of theological underpinnings of that, where it's like, okay, like we've thrown out a lot of good practices and left them to the Catholics or other movements to, like even just silent retreats, or just getting away for a bit of space for your soul to breathe, non-legalistic Sabbath, just like, but actually practicing devices off. So simple. Like, I feel like if you write it down, it's entry-level Christianity, but I feel like we skip it and try to do all this theology and stuff instead of just enjoying being Christians. And so I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but there's a real resurgence here in Australia of churches coming back to the simple things, coming back to doing communion slowly and actually talking about why it matters. Or like we had a spiritual retreat day. Now I would put us in like the charismatic Baptist kind of weird morphing, and Baptists are notoriously terrible at practices when it comes to anything liturgical or that kind of thing. We had a spiritual retreat day where we did like that reading where you go back and forth, I forget it right now, Lectio Divina and all that stuff. And our guys ate it up because, for the last 50 years, we've harped on about good teaching, which is fantastic. I love good teaching, but maybe at the neglect of personal experience and intimacy. And now bringing that back, like we've got enough theology, like our heads are full of knowledge, but just to start living it out is kind of that's what we're finding is really landing here. And conversely, and I know it's not about numbers, man, but we've seen more people come to faith since stopping trying to lead people to faith. Just when people start living it out, then other people start wanting that.
Yeah. What do you think's attracting them at the moment?
I missed that. Sorry, buddy.
What do you think's attracting them at the moment? The amount you said you've got more people coming to faith than ever. What are they seeing? They go, yeah, I want a piece of that. Two
things. I think they're seeing authenticity and then disillusionment with what's not working. Man, the Gold Coast is pretty, as in it's picturesque and everything, but it's so plastic. So people can live here for 10 years and have zero friends. And so we focus heaps on community and authentic relationships and, trying to actually hook people in, and not just for fun. Not just for like a Wednesday life group, but like we go snorkeling and whale watching and mucking around and doing life and eating food. And like, I think people are craving deep community where you can have fun with people, but also talk about your marriage. And I don't know, that's what we're finding is the authenticity and an alternative to what's not working, an alternative to the plasticness of our culture. Yeah.
Do you want to pick up that community point, because that's something you've kind of raised a few times?
Yeah, it's definitely, Dave, a theme that's been coming up over this whole talkathon, is that people have a deep sense of wanting to belong.
Yeah.
We want to belong. We want to be known, and we want to know people and each other and God. But actually, while we crave it, we're terrified of it too, because if we're authentic, and you get to see who I am absolutely, and I get to see who you are absolutely, and we know God sees us absolutely, then our fear of rejection, it terrifies us, but also then makes us want to perform and do things and get all of that stuff right. But then when we actually get to the point where we can be in community, being, well, you've just referred to communion, be in communion with God and one another, then actually we can start to share all of the struggles and problems that we have and get support and still operate as a community for the glory of God. And that's how it sounds to me as though, while you probably wouldn't want to go through it all again, what has come out of that is that you've all just been able to be yourselves and love and appreciate each other just for who you are. Just for who's Dave. You know, we just love you, Dave. We appreciate you, Dave. God's like, I love you, Dave. Nobody mentioned anything about what you could do. As a community, you're saying we have a collective responsibility and there's plans and things in place, but actually that burden doesn't all fall on me, because the battle's the Lord's. And it sounds as though within that, you know, the Holy Spirit's moving, which is just awesome to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd love it if people, like, okay, we met 37 minutes ago, and I feel completely comfortable with you fellas, because we've got Jesus in common. We've got, you know, a similar call to help people with mental health and open up authentic discussions. People don't have this. Do you know what I mean? Like, people are craving this, to be able to have that connection. So I agree exactly with what you said, man. Yeah.
When you were talking there, and you were saying, giving some examples of how you do community in Australia. I mean, it sounds incredible, like snorkeling, barbecues. Is it ingrained in the culture? Because it feels like it is from an outsider, but I don't know if I'm cliched about kind of, you know, shrimps on the barbie, etc., etc. But then you also mentioned that, you know, with the Gold Coast, it's a really plastic place and people can live there and never actually make community. Explain those two apparent contradictions.
Yeah. So I think within probably the community, one of the things I think sometimes in church world, we forget how good we've got it, you know, in Christian, like our community, like, you know, someone's sick, someone brings you a meal or whatever goes on. I just don't think that's the general experience of somebody who's living nominally in their culture. Sure, they might have their footy friends or whatever, but I think Christians, this is one thing in the early church that made all the Romans that envious, is that there was this culture of like laying down your life for each other and like being there for each other. And so I suppose that hopefully that's the gospel message, is that like if people come and meet Jesus, not only do they meet him, they meet his bride, and they come into this family, and, you know, it goes beyond surface level, you know. But I mean, at the same time, man, like, churches are really like not that common on the coast, and so we do stuff and people find it weird still. You know, you invite someone to church and sing songs and they're looking at each other like, this is so weird. But I think the community trumps all that, you know, and the gospel, obviously. Yeah.
Great. And talk to us a little bit about the wider context of Australia and attitudes towards mental health. I mean, I'm assuming there's lots of similarities to the UK, but I don't want to make assumption. What's your understanding of what attitudes towards mental health are like in Australia? Are they improving? Is there still a lot of stigma around it? When you call yourself pastor with bipolar in the general public, are they, you know, what labels or assumptions get attached to you?
Good question. So on the whole, the people leading the charge, raising awareness around mental illness in Australia are the secular organizations. Like we have one called Beyond Blue, and all the they're the ones that are really kind of like trying to remove the stigma. There's still stigma. Aussies are cynical, man. So like if you get the wrong guy, you'll say something about, I don't know, I've got this mental illness, and he'll question your sexuality as the first response. Like we're mean-spirited humans sometimes, especially the old school guys. Like my dad's generation, man, if they said anything on Facebook, they would get cancelled straight away. They're the worst. But so there's that sort of thing. But within the church, we are lagging embarrassingly. And like even my podcast, and look, to be honest, it's good, but I'm not the most qualified. I don't have experience in radio before, but it's actually getting traction straight away because just nobody's doing it. It was just a need that it's just like, okay, let's have some overt conversations on faith and mental illness. And people are like, I had someone the other day who's a Christian 13 years who's never heard a pastor talk vulnerably. And I'm like, what? That it doesn't make sense. Like you said on earlier, we've got to be vulnerable. And so the landscape is the secular culture is leading the way in normalizing mental illness and educating and providing all the resources that we as a church just grab and say, guys, you need to recognize this epidemic. So we got 27 million Aussies, and 3 million are diagnosed with anxiety to the point of intervention, like medical intervention. And they predict that on the current trends, 1 in 4 people in 20 years will be diagnosed with anxiety. So that's sort of the proportions.
And two questions. One, why do you think the graph is heading in that way in Australia? Are there wider societal issues that's kind of leading that anxiety epidemic? But then the other question was around when you said that the church is massively lagging behind.
Yeah.
What's some of your understanding as to why they are so slow to catch up? I mean, you obviously mentioned the fact that somebody had never heard it being preached about. That's obviously one of them. But what are some of the other reasons? And even on that, why do you think it isn't preached about? Is it a generational thing? Is it?
I don't know, man. Maybe poor theology, maybe stigma. I think stigma still. Like, I think people feel like if they go and see somebody, a psychologist or whatever, as a Christian, maybe they don't lack faith or whatever, which I think is terrible. I think that's sort of part of it. I don't know what's going on in society. Australia's changed from being like a real larrikin kind of like I was talking about before, where people mock each other a lot, to becoming quite left-leaning. I don't know. I just feel like we're in a really weird shift at the moment. Yeah. And as you guys know, with your, like, you know, all the guys who started with smartphones in their hands as babies are now kind of becoming influential. That's all playing into it too. So, I mean, I'm not a real good cultural analyst. I think just probably from within the church context, I think we fell behind. It's like anything, man. When sexuality gets talked about, we'll do it 2 decades later, or anything else. I just think it's that same trend within the church. We're just slow to adapt and slow to equip people.
Yeah.
I speak at a few churches about this, and it's a simple illustration, but if you look at a church, you've got rooms with glass for the breastfeeding mums. You've got a section down the back for people with prams. You've got the hearing loop here for the old people who can't hear. But in there, if the stats from Beyond Blue are correct, you've also got 25% of people who are socially anxious, who are wigging out, and then we get up and say, hey, get up and talk to 5 people around you and introduce yourself. And so all the anxious people and introverts are like I feel like just so many things we do are geared towards just sort of like not thinking that sort of thing through.
And if there was a church pastor listening and we're like, I feel convicted, absolutely, I need to be better. What are some of the basic things that they could be doing better?
I don't know, man. That's the answer. I don't know. Like, for me, okay, so sometimes in our staff meetings at church, lay down on the ground when they've been going too long and I know my head's starting to escape and my capacity's run out. I lay on the ground. I don't think that that's weird, and the staff are used to it. But I feel like if one person in church during the sermon just went off to the side and laid down, everyone would be like, did you see that weirdo who laid down? Whereas I'm like, I feel like there just needs to be like, just if someone has to walk around down the back, that's fine. Or if someone with autism needs to squeeze something, let him squeeze something or sit under a towel or whatever. Like, I don't know. I just don't think we understand it enough or talk about it enough to realize it doesn't matter. Like, if a guy came in with a wheelchair, everyone pulls a pew aside and gives him a chair and brings him a water. But if a guy came in with Tourette syndrome, which did happen once, which was super interesting, everyone freaked out.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's just education, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that didn't happen during one of your manic seasons, because
It was actually epic. I wasn't leading that church at the time, but it was awesome, and it was really good for the church because they're like, okay, we're not equipped.
Yeah,
we don't know what to do. You know.
Yeah, but that, I mean, there's a real tragedy there to have church that just doesn't know how to respond to culture, because then it becomes so separate from it. Which I know we're obviously meant to be in the world but not of it. But when that means that we actually create an environment that feels hostile and unwelcoming to the people we're actually trying to reach in the first place, there's a real tragedy there.
Yeah, and I don't want to rubbish the church. I believe in the church. I think we play a part in society still. This stuff. So now our church is on the journey a little bit. They're used to it. People yell stuff out during the sermon, and I just we'll talk about that afterwards or whatever. Yeah. Like a dude the other day went off at me. He was having an episode. So I'm like, well, if the guy with the sore leg limps, are we going to get mad at him for limping? Well, this guy's got a mental limp and he's just doing what he's doing. We can't get mad at him. Like, but then the rhetoric back is, what's the line? But as you guys know, what's the line? What do we have to challenge? What do we allow? What behavior needs to be corrected? It's all that. It's messy.
Yeah. But I guess, you know, the key to all of that is just authenticity. Like, what's the line to be challenged? If someone's being their authentic self, and that includes limping, that's not to be challenged. Like, nothing should come at the expense of authenticity. If someone's having to hide their authenticity to make somebody else feel comfortable, the Bible's got a lot to say about that.
Oh man, preach it. I agree with you. Yeah.
And talk to us about your podcast. So what are some of the topics you cover? Talk to us about some of the themes that you're rolling out. What's your next podcast episode?
So Rob Waller's coming out next week.
Oh, is he? Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And that wasn't even timed with this. That was already pre-scheduled. I try to invite either Christians with lived experience, professionals who speak into Christians with lived experience, or both. So I've had, as you guys probably know, with your podcast at the start, you start with all your mates because you're like, I've got no other fishing pond here. But they've been really powerful, and that's kind of set the trajectory, because it's kind of like normal conversations with Christians who are doing. So I did my first one, and then the next one was with a great friend who's a pastor that burnt out. So we just talked about spiritual burnout and recovery. We've had a guy who was addicted, anxiety. What I'm trying to do is cover kind of the most common either social disorders or anxieties or, mental health disorders in all different ways. So from the practitioner, from the person who's right in the guts of it, from the person who got through it, from the person who believes in medicine to the person who doesn't. I wanted someone to talk overtly about demons and all that stuff, but that's actually quite hard to get someone to come on and put their name to that conversation. I'm
not volunteering, Dave, so don't ask.
Which I get. I'm like, oh, no, I don't think I would. And then I was Googling one guy. There's some psychiatrist that does deliverance as well. And I'm like, I contacted him, but he didn't get back to me. But I think I just want to I just want the conversation. I'll ask anyone just to start bringing up the conversations. We've talked about spiritual abuse, even just as pastors, the performance anxiety and ridiculous pressures we put on ourselves. I've had some counselors. It's been good so far. It's only 20 episodes old, but I felt really blessed at the generosity of people. Like most people, like Rob Waller, when he said yes, I did a dance, man, because I've been on your website, Mind, Body and Soul, just gleaning those free the resources are unbelievable and free.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I'll have a crack and emailed him. He got back to me like a day later saying, yeah, let's line it up. And so I feel like that's cool. I was really thankful for that. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. I just want to read out. We've had a couple of comments on the YouTube link, and just to maybe reassure you, this isn't just an Australia issue. Laura, Laura, thank you so much for sharing what you have. She just said, I've stopped going to church as I need to fiddle with things and get up and walk around sometimes. And my vicar said I was too distracted and needs to concentrate. And I've been praying for 10 years for the church in the UK to become trauma-informed and be educated on mental health issues.
Yeah, man.
And you know, that's someone that's needing to do what they need to do to get through, to be able to concentrate. Like that's, you know, fidget, to be able to do whatever, to be able to focus. So yeah, I think we all need to learn. Yeah.
Laura, you're a legend. If you're still listening, I pray you find that church, because you need to pioneer that over there. It needs to happen here and there.
Yeah,
it really does.
Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Paul?
No, I mean, I heard that Life Church were launching a sensory room, weren't they? Recently.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah. Really put into that, which I just thought was amazing.
I didn't know about that. That's really cool to know.
Yeah. So you know that. I think if you keep putting these messages out there, and thank you for your time as well.
Yeah.
You know,
I appreciate it. This is awesome.
It's valuable, and again, we keep talking about this, and we will remain to do so. Keep inviting people to the conversation, bring their experiences, because if we're asking the question, the people who need the help out there are definitely asking that question, and probably like, who, how, God. You know, and why shouldn't we be at the forefront of mental health? Not just the discussion, but the solution. When our Creator is the one who can give us the manual.
Come on,
you know that you wouldn't do it with a machine, would you?
No, man.
You know, you'd go to the manufacturer, and you know, God knows that mental health is a problem. Because we're under strains and pressures of the world. You know, like say we're in it, but we're not of it. But the world wants to control the narrative. But actually, we've got it all in the Bible. It's all there.
Yeah, and that's why I want to respect and honor you guys. Like this campaign, this stuff is so vital. You know, you never know. I like that you've got it on YouTube and everything, and Facebook and that, because you just never know the Lauras or whoever's listening. It's so vital, man.
Yeah.
So vital. Yeah.
So how would we listen to your podcast?
Oh, so sunburntsouls.com. So basically that's the website, Sunburnt Souls. And then it's also, if you just go into any podcast provider like Spotify or Apple or whatever, thank you, Jesus, there was no one else called Sunburnt Souls. And so if you search it...
Tell us about the name, because I was intrigued when I heard that. What with that?
I was thinking about it a lot. It's playing off the Australia thing as well. We get sunburn every 5 minutes. I'm sunburnt today because I went out in the boat yesterday. But also, I just feel like that's a good example of what it's like to carry mental ill health under the surface. It's just like this tenderness that's always sort of there.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all respond to it differently. But when you're sunburnt, it's like you're still existing and you still got to get about your day. It's not you can't stay home from work. You got to still get about life, but you're doing it tenderly and protectively. Sort of that idea. Yeah.
That's amazing. I would love to know what we can be praying for you and for your church. In this next season. What to see happen.
I really just want to see God. What I would love to see is this perpetuates into, whether this explodes or not, I don't mind. But as long as, like, if I'm speaking into this in our, you know, Queensland context, that's excellent. But I just would love if other people who have a similar story and are like experienced or whatever get on board. I just reckon we just got to start speaking about it more, being authentic, encouraging people, you know, who do have mental ill health, that God is not, you know, mad at them, or it's not because they got a lack of faith, or any of that they've done something to disappoint God. All those stupid misconceptions, just get all that away. That's a big prayer, but just just to pray that God, oh man, that like I'm just as much in His grace now with bipolar as I was when I looked fit in my 20s. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's no difference, man. Nothing different to me or someone with a amputated toe, or like, we're all just like image bearers having a crack. And so, yeah, just to see that go out. What about you guys? What can I be praying for your campaign or further than that?
Thanks for asking. What do you reckon?
That we can keep stringing sentences together for the next
boys.
4 hours for a start. But no, we keep see God moving, and whoever needs to be listening and getting involved in the conversation, whoever needs to be reached gets reached.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And obviously that we give thanks for provision, and just for this. Just for more of this, that this will long continue, that this will be the first of many other things like it, where we're connecting across the whole church. You know, it's great.
I think it's awesome, boys. I really think what you're doing is great. Hey,
thank you.
Yeah,
it's really encouraging to hear that.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if you moved to Australia, because there's not a you here. So
is that an invitation, Dave? Is that an invitation?
You heard it here.
Yeah, that's right. I'll take you out in the boat, the Macca's boat.
Is it actually called the Macca's boat? Was that a true story? Did you actually go out in the boat?
Like, it's not as like in and out as that, but it was as ludicrous. Like over a day, not like it was like I left in the morning, and Jess just thought I was going about my day, and it was 17 grand as well. Like. I only had 17 grand. Like, it was the most you could spend. So sometimes God redeems the bipolar decisions, and it's been a great blessing to our family and others. But
she's forgiven you.
Yeah, she loves it. We're going out tomorrow. She loves it. There's whales here at the moment.
So when I turn up to work on Monday with a new motorbike, you know, I got
Dave.
Cheers.
He's done a Dave. That's what we'll say.
Oh, a Dave.
How do you pronounce your last name? Is it Quak?
Actually, just the same as a duck quacking.
Dave Quak.
Yeah, and that's thanks to the Dutchies as well. So, you know, the weird thing is, it's not even a normal name in Holland. It's weird there too. It doesn't mean anything. So, I just think because the Dutchies and the Germans have been fighting for years, I think back in the day, someone just gave them the name as like a punishment for something they did. I don't know. So
it sounds like an episode of what is it, Blackadder? You'll be forever known as Mr. Quak.
Mate, if you can come up with a variation I've never heard, I'll send you $1,000. So
nice. I'll take that.
Brilliant.
Dave, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We've got our next guest has just arrived.
There he is, Steve.
6 o'clock in the morning UK time. So this is commitment. Yeah.
Well done, boys, and keep pushing through. And thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.